Hey everybody, Adrian here. As you probably heard at the beginning of the Wednesday episode, we had some audio issues with this week's set of recordings. The quality isn't bad, but it isn't quite our normal standard. So just a heads up there. Also, we forgot to mention that we do still have our giveaway going for the Punchboard Media Summer of Great Games giveaways. And we are giving away a copy of 7 Sevens from Eagle Griffin Games. To enter that giveaway, go jump over to Twitter and tweet us at MHGameGuys and tell us who your favorite member of Punchboard Media that is not the Mile High Game Guys is. And make sure to include the hashtag MHGG 7 Sevens. And that will get you entered into the contest, and we'll be running that through this Sunday at noon, Mountain Time. So you have a couple more days to enter that contest and hopefully win an awesome game from Eagle Griffin Games. So anyway, on to the episode. Hope you all enjoy. Bye. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Mile High Game Guys Board Gaming Podcast. I'm your host Adrian.
I'm Zach.
And I'm Jeff.
And I'm Caitlin.
And
you don't
Caitlin
get
is
to
joining us
introduce
again,
me.
as you all know very clearly now. So Caitlin was here for those of you who maybe did not listen to the Wednesday episode. I don't know what's wrong with you. You should have listened to it. But Caitlin joined us for the Wednesday episode, and she is back here for this discussion episode because we are not doing a review this week. We are doing a discussion, and we are going to be talking about kind of a few different things that kind of all tie in together. We're going to talk a little bit about like the current state of board game media / journalism in regards to reviews and objectivity and payment from game companies and publishers and things like that. Just basically, I feel like after a year of doing this is a good time for us to touch base and kind of give everybody a little bit of a point of view about where we come from and how we approach this kind of thing. And also, for those of you who listen to a lot of other board game media, you might have noticed that this has been something that's kind of popped up recently. There was a huge, 15-page long BGG thread that spawned as a result of a Botch Games podcast, their most recent one, where they had Edward from Heavy Cardboard and Chris Kirkman from Dice Hate Me Games on, and they did a huge conversation about ethics in board gaming as it relates to paid reviews, paid previews, paid playthroughs, all of that kind of stuff. Basically payment, like how we as board game media people try to make a little bit of money at something we do largely as a passion project. There was a big thread about a week ago on the Board Game Group Facebook page. It's kind of been all over the place and slowly building, and we just want to touch base and kind of give our opinions on that and talk a little bit about it. So that's what this episode is. And yeah.
Chat chit.
We're gonna chat some chits. I
don't think you should say that again.
No, it's not good at all. I didn't want to say it as it was coming out of my mouth, but I was like, it's gonna get stuck in there otherwise. So
just spit it into his mouth.
I know, right?
Oh God. All right. Well, so this one is gonna be it's gonna be weird. We don't have a huge structure for this one, and we're gonna try and keep it on track. Let's start really quickly with
I have a question.
All right, yeah, Caitlin, go ahead. What's your question?
So, for people who do YouTube run-throughs and reviews and stuff, how much of their finances do you think comes from accepting these sorts of offers, essentially, and payments in order to do that kind of stuff?
Well, I think like everything else in life, it varies wildly based on how good you are at it and how much you are a key figure in
right.
it.
So the people who are causing the controversies are probably key figures, I would guess.
Yeah. So some very well established people like Rodney from Watch It Played, pretty much the entire Dice Tower crew. Those guys make a lot of money.
In various ways.
Right.
Certainly enough that they support not only themselves, like Rodney, his latest Kickstarter that he did, which granted Kickstarter's a little different because that's in theory fans supporting him. but he made enough money to support not only his side of the show, but also to have one of his co-hosts go full time. And yeah, they bring in a bunch of money. There's been estimates that Dice Tower brings in, I think, nearly 6 figures maybe off YouTube, although that's probably changed because I know YouTube recently changed their ad payouts that have screwed basically everybody on YouTube.
Yep.
But it essentially is like a lifestyle, like this is their job sort of thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I know that's where, if we shift more to something more relevant to us, particularly podcasting, recently the Secret Cabal did their first ever Kickstarter, and they made enough that their main host / producer / editor / everything, Jamie Keegi, he's now full time. Like his job is Secret Cabal, and I don't know how much the rest of the group of Secret Cabal makes off of the show, if anything.
Right.
I know Jamie does a lot of the work behind the scenes for that show.
So I mean, if it's their job, they're essentially just public relations for these game companies at this point, are they not?
Well, and that's kind of where the debate comes in is whether or not, like, if you look at other industries that are well more established than board games, like board games right now are like really starting to break into the mainstream. They're starting to get popular and be this like widespread thing, but if you look at something that's really truly widespread, like music or movies, cinema, things like that, you have reviewers and critics, especially, which that's a whole nother thing that we can talk about, the difference between just being a simple reviewer and actually being a legitimate critic. But in a lot of these other industries like music and movies, people who do this for a living, they don't have quite the same level of ties to the direct, like Roger Ebert.
Right, but he was also syndicated by like quite a few papers, so he wasn't being paid
by the paper. So it wasn't like Universal Studios was paying Ebert to do reviews, because then that might cause people to ask the question, was he objective with Universal Studios?
It may be a problem that board game reviewers are not being syndicated yet, and they don't have other options for making money.
100%. And I mean, this is burying the lead hugely here, because that's one of the things I was hoping to work up to.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine because ultimately that's what this comes down to, this whole discussion. And we can kind of go into it a little bit. But the fact of the matter is the vast, vast majority of people doing any kind of board game reviews, previews, discussions, board game media in general are hobbyists. We're people who are doing this because we love board games, because we care about board games, and because we want to, contribute positively to the board game industry. Whereas things like film and music that have been around for hundreds and hundreds of years as industries, like board gaming as an industry is still pretty solidly new, especially here in the States.
I would say decades and decades for film.
But I think you would find that out of the sort of paid reviewer status, people who get their feet wet in board games watching stuff like that, or who grow up watching stuff like that, you get your critics and your reviewers out of that crop who are like maybe not. They get to move into it being a bigger thing, and they want more objectivity, and they want it to be a real, respected, art form to do the whole critique.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's definitely where the industry is heading. Like, as board gaming gets to be bigger and bigger and bigger, I mean, you saw the same thing, like video games have kind of taken this path. Like, video games are compared to things like art and literature and film.
Ooh, I wonder how ethics is going there.
Video games are new compared to those more three established things, but video games have already reached a point where there's a lot more critical analysis. There's still a huge amount of issues with video game reviews and critical analysis, like the fact that you see pretty much every video game ever is rated on like a 70 to 90 scale on whatever
pretty much
channel.
Everything.
Yeah. Because they still want to make their money. They still want to have, support from developers and publishers and things like that. And ultimately this is a thing that some people in that thread, like one of the early comments in the BGG thread from that Botch Games podcast, was somebody's like, "Oh, did somebody cast a resurrect spell on the horse? Like, because we're just going to beat it to death again here."
I think it's an awkward evolution that every form of media goes through.
Exactly. And until we get to a point where board game media is actually like syndicated, like you said, like we're being paid from non-industry sources, then you're going to have these conversations pop up where people kind of step aside and they question like, hey, how objective are actual reviews at this point in the industry?
And video games have gone through this for the last as much as board games are going through it. Video games still are going through that as well.
And I mean, given that there's not an option for syndication or anything like that, can you ask people to give up that lifestyle just to be objective when it means that they would lose their income?
I mean, that's a great question.
I mean, that's kind of a cruel option to present, that like, I need you to be very objective in my board games, so you need to lose your job.
And the most objective reviews I think of are like newspaper movie reviews.
Right.
And I mean,
that's not a thing that's available yet.
Yeah. That's just not something that exists in board gaming or video gaming. Like, I'm going to go put my review in a newspaper across the country. That's just, and that's where like things like Metacritic and stuff like that just sort of like dominated review scores in the video game industry for so long, to the point of where like entire development teams were getting like bonuses based on like aggregate Metacritic scores.
I mean, and there's still accusations in the video game community that if you get promo copies and you don't write a favorable review, then they cut you off.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a concern, for a lot of up-and-coming board game reviewers. Like, that's something that even for us, like, there's things where, like, we swear on our show. Like, I honestly, like, I have concerns occasionally whether or not, like, our swearing or our willingness to rip into a game, a Kickstarter project that we think looks like bullshit, or a game that we think sucks. Like, how's that affecting, like, whether or not people are going to be willing to work with us long-term in the industry? I'm really committed to being who we are, so I'm not going to change those things. But I'd be lying if I said that that's not a consideration I have in the back of my mind. Like, does the fact that we are very unfiltered and very unapologetic about our opinions affect how people are going to react to us?
And I think once it is your livelihood, those questions become massive, because you can't just lose that all of a sudden.
Yeah.
If you need to kiss ass, then you probably will kiss ass so you can pay rent the next month. I mean,
how much ass do I need to kiss for someone to pay my rent? That's what I need to know.
If you've lost your job, you probably understand that question. I mean, it's just like, you can't just throw it away to be objective all of a sudden. Like, how are you going to support your family? All of that.
Those are hard decisions that I have not had to make yet.
But you can see how they would be difficult.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, and it raises the kind of the question, like, once you get to the point, because almost nobody starts out where they're like, oh, I'm going to do board game reviews for a living. Almost everybody cuts their teeth doing what we're doing exactly now, where we do this largely as a hobby because we care about it. And, we launched our Patreon just a couple months ago, and so we're actually making money now. But it's not a lot. It's certainly not enough for even one of the three of us to do this full time.
No.
But
in no way, shape, or form is that true. Yes.
I mean, I can do it for a living if somebody else pays for everything for me.
But once somebody does reach that point, once Dice Tower reaches that point, once Rodney reaches that point, Secret Cabal, like when
tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
When they reach that point, though, like, is it a process where by the time they reach that point, they've already established and they have the understanding in the industry that their opinions aren't for sale and they are doing their own thing and they're, who they are and people appreciate that? Or does that still be a concern? Like you were saying, Caitlin, like, hey, I can't really just rip this really shitty game because I don't want to lose what I have now.
I think you get to operate within much narrower parameters in terms of what your personality is. Like, you have to play nicer. You can still be whatever, original thing you were, but it has to be mainstreamed and it has to be more friendly to the industry, because I think they can wield a lot more influence over you once they know that you depend on them for your money.
See, I'd be curious almost if it's the other way, and I almost wish we could have had like it would have never happened because we're relative nobodies, but it would have been great to have like Jamie here, because I would love to hear like from Jamie's perspective, if now that they are, especially because their funding for him going full-time came through Kickstarter, where it's fans of the show, who paved the way for this, whether he feels liberated by this. Like, he can be more open and honest about like, this game is bullshit, or this thing that is happening in our hobby needs to be addressed that might be controversial, because once you've gotten to that point where you're able to afford to do it full time, you're making enough money to do that, then maybe that brings some freedom where it's not like, oh God, if I say the wrong thing, I'm just going to be blackballed to the point of oblivion.
That's true. But once you make it that big, you have the option of being like, well, now I can just do everything I want to do because everyone's just literally throwing all of this stuff at me that I can be like, no, yes, because I actually like that.
I think Kickstarter is different if it's a fan thing, because then it's a cult of personality, and you see that a lot on YouTube.
Yes.
And it doesn't always go right. There's some of them that have turned out to be quite strange, but I mean, their fans will stand behind them no matter what. And PewDiePie could run a Kickstarter for whatever the fuck, and people would still throw money at him, even
Has
though.
he done a Kickstarter before?
Despite the fact he's a racist
Despite the
douchebag.
fact, that he's like a racist little white supremacist shit. But that's not the industry. That is a horde of Redditors. But Kickstarter is this like the cult of personality. That's when you can strengthen whatever monster you started out as. Whereas if you want to play with the industry boys, you have to tone it down, I think.
Which is, I think, one of the interesting things about video gaming and board gaming as an industry, because they're coming of age, so to speak. I hate that phrase. It sounds so cliche. But
the industry is maturing.
Yeah, the industry is maturing. It's getting to a point where this is a legitimate conversation to be had in a time when things like crowdfunding are a thing. Siskel and Ebert, back when Siskel was still alive and Ebert was working with him, like,
they're both dead.
They're both dead?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
I thought Ebert was still alive.
No.
All right, anyway.
He died a couple years ago. It was very sad.
Yes.
When they were both, like, in their heyday, like, how would it have been different if they could have gotten crowdfunding? Like, if they could have had fans of their reviews.
That'd be weird.
Support
crowdfunding is super weird, and I don't know if I like it.
Right, which is one of the things that makes the current state of video game and board game industry, and especially from the media side of that, interesting. Because you're right, like, we're not getting syndicated. Like, there's nobody who's going to be showing up in the Denver Post writing board game reviews. Like, there's movie reviews, there's music reviews in the Denver Post. You're never going to see that from not never. You currently don't see that for board games and video games. So for media people who want to be objective, you pretty much have to rely on funding from your fans.
But I mean, even looking at Ebert's reviews, like when he hated something, he would write like, I mean, it was very well.
There are some fantastic negative reviews from him.
They were very well written, like just scathing but beautiful like reviews. And it wasn't just him screaming into a microphone and like yelling slurs. And I think that crowdfunding, it can be beautiful in that it helps people who, like you guys, who are not, terrible people, get a start. But it also lets actual terrible people get way too much influence in industries, and then the industry itself can't control them because they don't answer to anybody but their horde of fans.
Well, that's the tricky thing. Like Ebert and them, they were syndicated. Like they got their money more from like legitimate journalistic sources, like newspapers.
So his articles were always like prim, like they were in perfect form, if scathing. But it wasn't just him being like, fuck, for like 6 paragraphs. He just did it with more words.
Copy and paste.
which then brings in like, our format. Like, I just mentioned a little bit ago, my concerns about us being a format where we swear and curse and ramble and are all over the place. Like, obviously we're not the most professional of podcasts. Not by a long shot, and the industry hasn't gotten to a point where I think that's like, you don't have to be Ebert at this point. Like, first of all, nobody's even trying. There's a few people who I think are getting close to being really good, legitimate, critical analysis of board games. But for the most part, I mean, it's a lot of personal opinions. It's wow, I fucking hate this game, or good God, I fucking love this game, even if you leave the swears out of it, And it makes it hard for somebody who's not in the media, like a general board game consumer who's looking to buy a game, and they try to find some information on that game, they're going to read a bunch of reviews, and some of them might be somebody who was paid by the company to write a glowing review where, oh, this is the best game ever. These mechanics are truly unique. It's innovative. It's majestic. It's wonderful. Blah, 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 blah. When really the person maybe played it twice and then put it on a shelf because they've got to move on to the next review. And I think that's where the real kind of question of how the current model of board game media and payment and the relationship that people have with the industry. I mean, we're members of Punchboard Media, and Punchboard Media has people like Chris Kirkman is a member. Dice Hate Me Games has a podcast. They're a member of Punchboard Media, and they also make games. I think it's not unreasonable for somebody who is outside of that media circle, who's just a general consumer who's looking to buy a game. I could understand why they would question any review of a Dice Hate Me game from anybody from Punchboard Media, simply knowing that Chris Kirkman and that is part of our organization and is involved in it. Like that's where.
But they don't have another option.
And that's true. And then that's where this all gets a little fuzzy because.
Touch fuzzy, get dizzy.
We go to conventions and we try to meet people and network people, and you end up with people like, Steven from Stronghold is a fantastically nice human being, and he's a bunch of fun, and everybody I've ever known who has spent any amount of time with him has said as much. And so how do you balance like meeting and interacting with these people on a friendly basis? We had our interview with Jamie Stegmeyer, one of the nicest people in the entire board game industry.
Yeah, I will never say a bad thing about the man ever again. Not that I ever did, but
Well,
he just charmed you silly.
Oh boy, charmer.
I could say that. I could say that I love that. Like he was a fantastic person to interview. It was great getting to actually meet him. I still don't like Scythe. Like but that he also doesn't pay us. If somehow somewhere down the line we ended up sponsored by Stonemaier Games, then could people trust? And that's obviously it's a little different for us because we have such 3 different tastes that there's pretty much guaranteed one of us isn't going to like a game and is going to kind of point out its flaws. But other shows where it's 1 or 2 people who might have the very similar tastes. How do people know when you're being honest about how you actually feel versus what you were paid to feel?
And I don't think there's a problem with us because I don't think any of us have ever hidden our opinions about anything.
Oh, God, no.
I mean, I still don't know that with like music reviews. I'll read stuff on, good gracious, Pitchfork or whatever, and I will completely disagree with whatever the reviewer said, and they hate whatever it is, and they're just like furious, and I don't understand it, and I don't know if they're being paid or not or whatever, but I'm just like, okay, I guess we have a difference of opinion. Like, I enjoyed this thing and you didn't, and that's fine.
Or you didn't like this thing and I like this thing, and I need to make you pay for that emotionally in the comments below.
I don't leave comments because that's where bad things happen.
That's where terrible, awful things happen.
Yeah.
Zach, you've been ridiculously silent through this one. What kind of opinions do you have? Let's hear your voice a little bit here.
I'll pay you for your opinions.
She'll start throwing bills at you right now.
I'll make it rain.
Yeah. I think it just all comes down to transparency. That as long as people know what if you've been if it's been a paid review or if you got a free copy for a game, as long as you're upfront about it, and especially like you don't just hide it hide it at the back of a YouTube video or in some descriptions or something like that.
Like or literally only the description.
Exactly. That people can do what they want as long as that whoever is watching it knows whether or not they've been paid for it.
Which I agree with that in theory in this like ideal perfect world where people did that. But the problem is there's a lot of shows that don't. There's people who hide their disclaimers in the show notes.
Yeah, and I think that's messed up, and they shouldn't do that. That's
and we've done one review of a game that we've gotten for free so far.
Yeah.
And
Spires.
We haven't done a review for Spires yet.
Well, we talked about Spires.
But we've
Yokohama is specifically what I'm referring to.
Yeah. So 2.
Yeah. And
Spires might show up in a future like full on review, but it's not a like super deep game where we have a lot to review about it.
But
we've gotten other review copies that we haven't gotten to yet. Lisboa is hopefully coming up next week. We got a review copy for that.
We were
got
going to
my
review it
Kickstarter
anyways,
copy
but
before that, we never opened the review copy, so I don't know if that changes anything.
But we've already thrown that like right at the front. We're like, hey, we got this game for free. Just so you know.
Mhm.
I mean, it's probably not going to change our opinions. It didn't.
Yeah.
Well, and
Lisboa's still going to suck.
We did that with Yokohama. Like, we were very open about the fact that Yokohama
Scalding take.
Yeah.
Yokohama was our first ever review copy. And I'm still very grateful that they sent us a review copy.
And I believe it was during the podcast I bought it online.
Yes, as we were reviewing it, you're like, purchase.
Yeah.
And Deluxified.
Because you got the deluxe version, because we didn't get the deluxe version for the review.
But you said something about the casual consumer, like looking for a game review, and I guess that's not how I experience the board game community at all as a very casual consumer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people introduce me to games in person and they tell me about them, and then we play them, and I sort of gather an understanding about what they think and what I think.
It depends on how you consume, I don't know, how you buy.
Yeah, board games seems to be a very like social sort of consumption.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Where...
It definitely is, but I know for me, especially in my first couple years or so, when I was very heavily into buying new games.
Anything.
Yeah.
I think maybe you were just a little manic.
I mean, you're not wrong. I would definitely go to like the Dice Tower or Rado or any of those ones and be like, oh, I heard about this new game. It sounds cool. What do they think about it? What do I think about them?
Like, I hate to be a terrible, terrible peon, but like, is Amazon reliable?
I mean, I don't read any reviews on Amazon ever.
I don't read like websites for hobbies because I'm not very good at this.
That's understandable. I figured out whose opinions, like, if I don't go to Rado to figure out what area control, very combative multiplayer game to buy, because he's not going to do it. He'll be, more 2-player, more solitary-esque games and stuff like that. So I figured out which people's opinions I not only trust but whose I agree with, I guess. So if they like a game, I'd be like, I like it. And so that's where part of it comes in, is like if they,
I guess I've never connected with a critic in that manner.
Yeah, I don't think I have either.
Like, if I'm buying something I don't know anything about, I go to Amazon and I read the 5-star reviews and the 1-star reviews, because I want to know what people who fucking hated it thought and what people who loved it thought.
I don't even know how I buy games anymore. What's the top of the hotness at BGG? I want those games.
I'm just going to close my eyes and click.
Remember, I keep Munchkin Quest. That's the last game I bought without doing any research whatsoever.
Most brutal.
Isn't that your shame game?
Yep.
Yeah, it's a constant reminder of how he fucked up.
Yep. Someone was telling me I should do a shadow box of it.
How much did that cost?
I bought the game in 2 or 3 expansions, so over $100 I spent on it just on a whim. And so
yeah, you have. Wow, that is just some.
This is before I even came to Denver.
That's super manic, dude.
Yeah, this was a long time ago. So I when it comes to video games, I'm much more like Caitlin. Like, I'll jump on Steam. If I'm thinking about buying a game in the Steam sale, I'll look at the Steam reviews.
And I never trust it when the reviews have suddenly become super negative on Steam, because then I'm like, something weird is going on.
Something changed. Or
some sort of social media
and
thing
I Google
just
it, and inevitably there's some like Gamergate drama, and I'm just like, oh god, I don't care.
They're charging too many microtransactions.
Well, not always. So for me, one of the good examples of this is there was a zombie survival game, and I'm trying to blank on the name, but it was a really good game, and I really enjoyed it when I played it. Like, you control multiple characters and you build a little base, and people interact, and you got to keep people happy and all this, and you venture out.
Dead State?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And then they came out with a second one, and people lost their shit on the first one and the second one, because it was basically a more or less like an updated version of the first one. And so it's one of those where I'll look at the reviews, and I've thought about picking up Dead State 2 when it was available on Steam sales, and people just constantly like, oh, this is just a shitty patch, and they screwed everybody who bought the original version. And
Yeah.
It was a Kickstarter.
I mean,
'cause
I pay
Kickstarted
attention
it.
to things that are like patch notes, but if it's just like, oh, they're evil, something, something.
I have to rage at something,
Yeah.
except my parents.
Despite all my rage, I'm still just a redditor in a cave. Yeah. But yeah, no, I pay attention to, yes, I like to just read random reviews because I want to know what random human beings like me, because I'm not an expert at video games or board games or any of that shit.
Which, and like reading through some of these threads that have popped up from this, like there's a lot of people who are like that. They're like, hey, I look at like BGG user reviews for games, like to formulate my opinion. For me personally, as we've gotten into the review industry, again, big air quotes. Every time I say review industry, I'm going to throw big air quotes. But as I get to know other podcasters, video reviewers, people like that, like I've learned whose opinions and whose tastes especially, and I think that's the key, isn't just opinions, it's actual tastes in games, align with me. Like if I hear Edward and Amanda, talking about a game, especially depending on how they talk about a game, I'm familiar enough with their content that I can tell based on how they talk about a game, whether it's one that I'll like or not. Even if they love it, and it's like there might be a way that they love it, but the way they talk about it, I'm like, I don't think that's one for me. And then sure enough, it might not be. Like I mentioned, I think in last week's episode, I like a lot of Rahdo's stuff, like the way he does his really kind of spastic reviews of like, oh, it's my turn. I could do this. I could do this. I could do this. I could do that. I'll do this other thing. But I think I'm going to do this. Okay. And then, Jen's character, she can do this or that or that or this or this. And she's going to do this. And then the way he like does his run throughs really like helps me. Like it fits how I approach games. And so I can watch a couple plays, like a couple rounds of a game he does and be like, yeah, I think those have the kind of decisions that I like in a game. Or no, that game seems like one I won't enjoy. But also, like you said, Zach, I am well aware of Rahdo's biases. Like he doesn't like very conflict-heavy games. He doesn't like games that don't play well at two players.
I feel like those connections are very appealing to a certain like personality. Like it's having like a favorite late night host who you just like really enjoy, even if you don't necessarily agree with what they're talking about. You think they're funny. They've got it. Something, but and like I think that's when the trust thing kind of becomes questionable, because if you connect with someone on that level, do you really care whether or not they're being paid to do these reviews, or do you like them because of their thing?
Right.
And yeah, that's exactly what I was about to say. Like, what level of trust do you have in these people? Like,
do you trust them because of their reviews, or do you trust them because of their personality? And they've essentially, you think, I mean, I don't know. I connect with Stephen Colbert, I guess, which is a weird thing to say, but like he sometimes talks about dumb stuff that I don't necessarily think is on point, but I still watch it because it's Stephen Colbert and there's something there that I find value in. So even if you don't necessarily like believe totally in what they're saying, does it matter?
Well, so in the BGG thread that, like I said, like
that I didn't read it, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
Oh, sorry, I thought I had like
nobody forwarded these things to me.
Way to go, Adrian.
It was in the BGG thread. It's in our BGG Guild.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Sorry. Well, so in it, we posted a link to a thread that was based off of the Botch Games podcast episode of this, where it's a 15-page long thread in BGG's really shitty UI.
That is ugly.
Yeah. But somebody asked this question, and I'm going to pose it to all three of you now. And it doesn't necessarily, have to relate to board games in this. But so the question is, if your favorite reviewer released a video tomorrow admitting they'd been paid for every review they had ever done, why would that cause you to question their credibility? And I'm going to throw in, so that was the question. I'm going to throw in would that cause you to question their credibility?
Yeah.
If like Zach, you mentioned like you do Rahdo, and I like a lot of Rahdo stuff. I like a lot of heavy cardboard stuff. If somebody that you constantly went to because you trusted their opinion, if they tomorrow came out and said that every single review they've ever done has been paid, would that cause you to question their credibility? Would it cause you to question the things you believe about them as a reviewer? And if so, why? If not, why?
Okay. So you said that this is my favorite person or whatever? That was the question?
Yeah. The person you, like the number one person you would go to, if you had to pick only one reviewer to go to for an opinion, if they admitted they were all paid, would that change your opinion?
It would not, mainly because if they've already, like in the past for years, been the person I'd gone to, and if they're the number one, that means that every time that close to a majority of the time I go to them, I would agree with their tastes or approve. They're like, oh, this is a great game, and then if I'd get it as a great game, or if they say it's a bad game, then I, if I end up playing it, it'll probably be like it's a bad game. Then it's like, well, whether or not they're being paid for it, it's still aligned with what I was wanting from that person. It might color the reviews that I hear in the future from them, but I would say it wouldn't make me question things that I'd already heard, mainly because I'd already heard them and I'd already processed them, and I would, if it's the number, the top reviewer that I'd go to, that I would probably agree with a lot of the things that they were already saying, whether or not they'd been paid for it.
All right, Jeff, what about you?
So my favorite video game reviewers, GiantBomb.com, big fans. I would be crushed just because their opinions and stuff like that has been so I don't know, similar to ours, where it's just a bunch of people talking about how they like video games, and they talk like I do, and and
I cough like them.
Yeah.
We all have pneumonia now.
Yeah. And oh yeah, that was all just an act. I mean, they are personalities and stuff like that. But if it was true, oh yeah, we were just personalities, pretending to be all this to have these opinions.
Well, I mean, that's different than what he was saying. He was just saying they were just being paid.
Yeah.
Not that they were paid to be that.
Yeah. But I mean, they've also come out on multiple times and be like, no, we don't get paid for reviews.
Yeah.
And but if they had lied the whole time, my yearly subscription, I've given them money. Oh God.
The demons were inside you the whole time, Jeff.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be hard to trust them anymore. They're entertaining. Oh, but now how much do I trust their opinions on things that they say?
All right, Caitlin, what about you?
So I guess I'm the weirdo in that I don't follow any reviewers or review sites. I read, I guess, articles about albums that come out. So music is only the thing that I can talk about. But I don't think I would care, because there was a music reviewer, he reviewed for Spin for a long time. His name was Chuck Klosterman. And he wrote books, and I bought his books and read them because I just really liked the way that he wrote. And even though we had kind of wildly divergent tastes in music, I really just enjoyed reading his reviews because he was very funny. And I guess I subscribe more to personality than I do to the truth of whatever is going on. Because, yeah, I don't know. I enjoy seeing the show and seeing the improvisation that they do, because I respect that more than their objectivity, because I don't need them to make decisions for me.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I don't think I've had a decision made for me by any reviewer either.
No, yeah, I would agree with that too.
Yeah.
Also, I've never had it made, I would say, I've never had it made by a single reviewer. It's always been a
Influenced?
consensus.
Yeah, it's been influenced.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they held you down to a toilet and were like, buy the game.
Obviously.
Buy the game. Buy the game, you bitch.
So the two immediate answers that popped up to this thing, and I'm not going to go through the whole thread and find everybody who answered this exact question. So first off, he followed this. So that was the question. He followed the comment up and he says, assuming they are your favorite reviewer because you tend to find them useful, there is no reason to expect their next review would be in any way less useful simply because you're now aware that they are being paid for their reviews.
Exactly.
It's like saying your favorite restaurant no longer has the best food in town because you found out that the manager supports a different football team than you. It might no longer be your favorite restaurant, but that has nothing to do with the food quality. And then the two responses to people that people made to that. One guy said, simply, I couldn't trust him anymore. As for every enthusiastic review, I may find myself thinking, okay, maybe this game is good, but he probably intentionally skipped some cons. And then the other guy says, but I have to wonder, did they give those games favorable reviews because they really liked them, or because the publisher paid them to? Was their rating higher than it otherwise would have been if the next paid game is just so-so? Will their fee encourage them to oversell the game? The extent to which their reviews are influenced by their financial incentives and not their actual opinions will diminish how useful their reviews are to me. To which I say, Both of those I think are shenanigans. If I found out that one of my favorite reviewers ever was paid for every single review they'd ever done, then I'd be disappointed, but I wouldn't necessarily care, because if they're my favorite reviewer, if they're the person I trust the most with reviews, it's probably because they have consistently aligned with what my tastes are. Because when the first time I played a game that they positively reviewed, I was like, oh shit, yeah, everything they said positive, I see positive. Like, sure, like that seems good. And then it happened again and again and again. And over time, I grew to trust their opinions. If they say the game is good, then I will like the game. If they say a game is bad, I might not like it. And so even if I found out all of a sudden that they were paid for all of those positive reviews, it doesn't change the fact that those reviews were accurate for my tastes. You know, like there's some reviewers who I don't trust because their reviews consistently don't align with what I like. You know, there's reviewers who constantly trash on like Euro mechanics or heavy games or things that I really like. And I'm like, I disagree. Like those, like you're talking bad about a game that I love, and I can't trust that.
It's funny that you say that, because David watches this video. He does music reviews called The Needle Drop, but this guy and I have just totally different opinions on so many things, and I hate him so much. But then when we agree on something, it's super satisfying, because I feel like two bridges have like joined together somehow, and across this vast divide of opinion, we're like, yeah, that song does blow.
And then you both just do the predator handshake.
Fucking.
So I don't know. I don't distrust him, but I'm just like, he's the villain in my story, right? But when we agree, then it's
like, shit, I just agreed with you.
Yes, but it's fun,
Did we just become best friends?
Because I feel like I am also becoming some sort of weird character in this review opera. I guess I take this too funnily. Sorry.
No,
it's good.
Sorry.
I think and that's the thing. Like, this isn't one like although some people on the internet, shocking, get really fucking heated about this conversation. Really, it's one you got to take with a grain of salt. Like at the same,
And at no point in a lot of these conversations, a lot of people are like, oh, they're getting paid to do good reviews. And I don't think that's so much happening with really any of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think a publisher's going to someone and be like, here's a free game and a bunch of money. We want a good review. And I don't think that's happening at any point.
Do board game publishers have that kind of money?
Yes.
No, I think that's the reason that's not happening, is they don't have that kind of money.
I mean, to
especially
do that
in the
to
board
everyone?
game,
not to everyone.
No. But I mean, there are big people out there that they could do that too.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's happening.
So like Asmodee could probably do that. Asmodee could just throw money at some random reviewer and be like, give us a positive review. But one, Asmodee has enough fanboys that they don't need to do that. But most board game publishers are in a position where their budget for reviews / advertising, which I'm going to loosely at this time clump into the same category, that budget for them is small enough where I would, and I don't know, maybe I'm naive. I could be just super naive on this. I would like to think most of them take at least a cursory look at who they're going to send a game to. You know, like I would like to think that Steve Jackson Games, who's pretty well done, they're not looking at Heavy Cardboard like, maybe we should send them a game, because they know that that's not going to be a place they're going to get a review.
They should review the next Munchkin.
But like, they're not throwing around like AAA video game publisher like fucking
no.
But
I also
money.
But I also don't think that happens in the video game
in the board game industry.
There's what?
Like there's almost no one. There's almost like AAA. There's not an EA in board game. Like Asmodee is the closest thing you have to like an EA of board gaming,
or Fantasy Flight, which is Asmodee at this point.
Which is Asmodee. Exactly.
But I would say that would be the top of the line of the Asmodee.
Workshop. Just charge so much.
Yeah. But I still don't think that even happens in the video game industry.
No, but I mean, when you have games with $1 million budgets, you have more money on
more
the
reason
line.
to want
and you have a lot of
happen.
Lawyers.
Yeah, but I still don't think that happens in video games as much as people complain about it.
Although the problem I do have with video game reviews is try hard to find a legitimate reviewer in video games who's giving a bad review. There's not many. Like a lot of the bad reviews you find are Steam reviews from users, from players, or random dudes on Reddit,
Oh, my favorite trusted source.
Yes.
A random dude on Reddit.
Well, but that's where you find negative comment. And granted, then some people, like you said, Caitlin, like they go off and go super negative for some stupid fucking bullshit, sexist, racist,
but
entitled
that's why
bullshit.
I like to read user reviews, because if I just ignore the ones that are stupid, where it's like, I hate women and I also hate this game because it had a woman in it. I'm like, okay, whatever. But if someone's like, I don't like
SJW as a negative in a review, I immediately discount everything.
But if it's like, I don't enjoy the way the patch updated how combat works, I'm like, interesting, maybe I'm not gonna do this. Like, that sounds shitty. Or this game crashes a lot. I pay attention to that one. So, like, I feel like users are fairly honest about that sort of feedback. You can generally weed out who's being a crazy pants because they start using 400 exclamation points and being like, feminism! It is an evil unto our nation, Trump! And you're like, shut up. But if someone's talking about, like, actual gameplay, like, issues and, like, mechanic functions... and
feminism, but also this crashed a lot.
my feminism won't reboot. Help! Yeah.
So shifting gears a little bit, do you think there's a difference? So, like, say if we, comparing this to other industries, so like for a video game or for like board games, compared to, say, let's look at movies, right? So you have like movies are something that are audience independent, right? Like it doesn't matter who watches a movie; the movie is the same movie regardless. Whereas with board games, we've talked about, like, in several of our reviews, where certain games require the right people to play them with. Like if you try to play Dark Overlord with a bunch of people who don't know each other and who are really shy and introverted, that's probably going to be a really shitty game of Dark Overlord. Unless you have a really good ability to bring people out of their shells and get them to open up, it's going to, like, not play well because that's not how the game's meant to play. And same thing with music. Like, a song is going to be the same song no matter who listens to it. Like, it's a physical, immutable, like, recording.
I'd like to disagree with you on that topic.
I'd even disagree with you on the movie one, too. But...
But I think you're right about the social...
Different people have different opinions of the same movie.
I think you're right about...
But it's always the same source.
The social interaction that most board games require. Let me just edit that one.
Well, so like focusing on, like, so especially a game like, or to go to one maybe a little bit more common than Dark Overlord, something like Werewolf, or even, Pandemic. People talk all the time with, like, a game like Pandemic, where since alpha gaming is a problem, you have to play with the right group, because if you play with somebody who's too overbearing, they're going to tell everybody how to do their turns, and it's going to mess with the game, and it's not going to be a fun game. Like, there's so many, or we were just talking, like, for the four of us, we just this weekend played Tales of the Arabian Nights, which I fucking hated, but I tried to, whenever I was reading somebody's story, really act it up and read it well. Like, I checked out when it wasn't my turn, I'll admit. Like Caitlin said, I was checking football scores. It was Sunday. My Broncos had just lost. I wasn't in a great frame of mind. But, that, like, things like that matter. Like, how people play the game matters because you're interacting with other human beings. And video games have that same problem to a slightly different degree, like, depending on the game. Like, BioShock is going to be more or less the same story no matter who plays BioShock, because it's a single-player game.
But we're used to play World
people
of
might have different
Warcraft.
experiences, and they might interpret it in different ways.
Yeah.
But, like, Call of Duty, if you're playing Call of Duty online, if you're playing with, a team of people who care, or one of our friends, Nick, who I think might listen to the show, plays a lot of Counter-Strike. If you play Counter-Strike and you play with a team who cares about actually playing Counter-Strike and doing it well, they're going to, work together as a team, try to, capture the point. Like,
I think you're talking about forms of media that you consume with others, and then the others that you just consume in the presence of others. So, like, I could take all of y'all to watch a movie, and we would each watch away with it with our own experience.
Yeah.
Unless one of you like punched me during the movie for some reason.
Right in the face. Bah! How do you like the movie
If
now?
we like listen to the same album, like I would walk away being like, "Oh, I liked these songs," and you might be like, "I fucking hated everything on it."
But then what if you hit them right in the face in the middle of the album?
But if we have to play,
point out the fact that the medium itself, the movie itself, the song itself, the album itself has different effects on different people. Whereas board games, you know, I talked about like on Wednesday's episode when Paul and I were playing Spirit Island, the rulebook itself says there are 2 entirely different ways to play this based on 2 entirely different types of players, and you'll have 2 entirely different experiences, and they're both good on their own. But if you mix them, it makes a bad situation.
I mean,
like
I'm not good at board games. Like, I'll be really, really honest, or video games. But like the thing that is enjoyable is the interaction with the other players. Like when we played Arabian Nights, like, yes, you didn't enjoy it, but you were there and you were laughing at stuff, and we were all laughing at stuff, and like that's the fun part to me. And I guess that's what matters more than anything else.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not so cold-hearted of a son of a bitch that I can't laugh at other ridiculous shit.
No, I know, but like that's the player-to-player interaction that I look for in games, especially board games when you're, sitting at the exact same table with a bunch of other people. But that can be hard for people to open up to. So I think you have to kind of.
Well, so it brings up that question though. Again, like, I mean, if we're pointing out like Tales of the Arabian Nights. Where do you draw the line between, and this goes back to reviewing a game. Like, if I'm going to review Tales of the Arabian Nights, I'm going to review it negatively because the game itself doesn't enjoy, but like you said, I don't enjoy the game itself. But when we played, I laughed. Like, there were funny, ridiculous moments that were just absurd. It wasn't something that I didn't enjoy the game for the game. I enjoyed it for the social interaction. But then that thing doesn't exist in movie, like.
But is that a part? I don't watch video or board game reviews. Do they talk about the social aspect?
I mean, some do. Like, I mean, that's like shut up and sit down.
That's their main thing.
Like, I feel like that should be a huge chunk of like, especially cooperative games or storytelling games. Like, that is also, to me, that is just as, if not more so, relevant than the actual game itself.
Well,
did I have fun with another human being? Yes, no. If yes,
which checkbox? Yeah, it's more of a flow chart. Yeah.
Well, so you run into this issue then, and granted, Caitlin, like you said, you don't listen, you don't like, especially in board games in particular, but just in general, you don't focus on particular reviewers or critics for things. But how do you determine so if we sit back for a second and take a step back from us being reviewers or quote unquote industry people, if we take a step back and just look as consumers looking to buy a game, how do you evaluate the difference between the actual mechanics, the game itself that is in the box versus the experience you will have with other players? How do you determine that value? And tangentially, like, again, if that was how do you look at a review for a game like that and determine the difference between what the game itself offers versus what the interaction offers, and how the reviewer of that game interpreted those 2 separate things?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's fairly easy for me to make that decision because if the game is at like fucking competitive, I'm not interested already because I know that I'm not going to like the mechanics, and I know that I'm not going to enjoy the interaction that I have with other people because I don't like to compete. So like if it says cooperative, then I don't know. I usually find out about games by playing them randomly because someone drags me into it. Did I miss part of your question?
I don't think so. I don't know.
I don't know if that was a helpful answer, but if I know that a game is mechanically a thing that I don't like, then I already know that I'm not going to enjoy the interactions that come out of it because it's going to force me to do stuff that I don't think is fun.
Okay, well, so on the flip side of that, though, so if, like, to focus a little bit on Tales of the Arabian Nights that we just played, that is a game that mechanically I fucking hate, but I still laughed. I still had, like, ostensibly fun. I didn't enjoy the game itself, but I didn't have a bad time. Like, we laughed at ridiculous shit that happened. Like, all that ridiculous shit.
Are you swiping left on my game, Adrian? Yeah.
I swiped right.
I don't know how to I don't know. I mean, how do you bring those two things together?
Well, so for me personally, like that's
Like,
hard, especially
if you wrote a review, would you mention that you still laughed at some
I
of the
absolutely
storylines?
would, because that was a part of
And
my experience playing
Then I
the
think
game.
that's
And if we go back to some Roger Ebert things, like he has mentioned, like, oh, he's laughed at certain things, and then it was also, this was fucking awful.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so to put on my reviewer hat / Robert Ebert hat,
I know
I'm not
exactly
Robert
what
Ebert,
your
I'm not
hat
gonna
looks
pretend to
like. It's a page boy hat.
it's a fantastic page boy hat, and I love it. I just watched
What
on
it looks like
Netflix the other
everything.
day Little Evil. It's a Netflix
Oh,
only
I
movie.
saw that too.
I fucking hated that
It
movie.
was so bad.
It's real bad, but I laughed multiple times through the movie.
Yeah.
Or like I've watched stand-up comedian acts. Again,
Yep.
like Netflix has been really heavy on stand-up
Yep.
comedy recently. And I'll turn one on and I'll be like, oh, I'll give this a chance.
Yeah.
And I'll watch and there'll be times I'll be like, like, or okay, yeah, good play. But this is still fucking stupid. Dislike.
I mean, I think it's fully valid to dislike something while still acknowledging that it had moments where you enjoyed it. That doesn't make you dishonest. That just means that it had like occasional glimmers of humor. Okay. But it was still overall, not really your thing.
So for all three of you guys, I'm going to pose this question to you from two different perspectives. Jeff and Zach on one side, Caitlin, you on the other.
No.
How like I'm asking this personally as me as a reviewer, asking you guys if you in theory as fans or whatever. How can I as a reviewer do a better job of coordinating the difference between my opinions of the content itself, the board game in the box, the show on the screen, the music in the record, versus the experience I had with it? Like, how do you personally like that to be differentiated? Do the Tales of Arabian Nights, I hate everything about the mechanics of that game, but I still laugh. I still have a fun time. I still enjoy aspects of the interaction I have with other people. Just at the end of it, I feel like it doesn't matter. Or a song or a movie, that same thing. Like, there's things about it that's like, oh, that's Lonely Island Boys. Zach, you love Lonely Island. Some of their songs,
those Lonely Island boys.
I guess that's where I just fundamentally disagree with your outlook, because anytime that I have laughed and enjoyed time with other people mattered. Even if I didn't win or there were no points in the end, like, it didn't not matter in the end. It mattered way more than winning ever would have, because I appreciate those much more than scores or rankings or mechanical
Also, like, outside of board games, so like, Zach, to pivot to you, Lonely Island.
Yeah,
I like some of their songs.
Lonely Island Boys.
Those Lonely Island boys. Let's do it. Okay.
I'm on a boat.
Yeah.
So like, I say that because like you listen to Lonely Island a lot.
I do.
I know you really like Lonely Island.
Yeah.
I like
some of their songs. I love. I think they're good songs as an objective song.
Okay.
Most of their songs I think are ridiculous and stupid and pointless, but they occasionally make me laugh.
Okay.
So as somebody who loves Lonely Island, as a fan of Lonely Island, looking at me as a reviewer, how would you want someone like me to separate my objective review of the content itself, that, oh my God, this song is inane and fucking stupid, but at the same time it made me laugh, and that's worth ostensibly something.
Depends if I can take over a little bit of this one.
Yeah, thank you.
I also answer this question?
So it depends if you have any general music appreciation of hip hop and things like that, because Lonely Island not only is just comedic and things like that, but they do have a history of like actually appreciating original hip hop, because there's a lot of songs that they do make homages to, like the Warren G. Regulators. There's a whole song about taking a giant shit that is to the like same beat as that Warren G song.
Also,
you
they
might
acknowledge
not
the hip hop genius of T-Pain.
Yes, they do.
It
but
was 24 when he rhymed mansion with Wisconsin.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But you might not appreciate that by listening to it and be like, oh, this is fucking stupid. It's a song about shit. But like, if I'm telling you, hey, you know that Warren G song you actually like? That's basically that song. Or even if you didn't like it, like, they have some appreciation of that, that you can like them more just because I have now processed and given you that information.
Yeah, tag her in.
Tag me in, Coach. Yeah, so I would love to talk to you about music reviewing, because if you were a music reviewer, what I would want to hear from you is your opinion on the production values of the songs. I would want to hear what you thought of the samples that were being used. I would want to hear what you thought of the references that were being made, like all of the musical construction. And then you can talk about how you thought the lyrics were inane. Beep, burp, burp. And then you can say that, like, even though I'm on a boat was fucking dumb, like, I fucked a mermaid, made me laugh real hard, and I'd be like, nice.
Yeah.
Even though I think you're kind of a prick because I read this review, I appreciate that we laughed at the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean, I was just about to say all of that.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, these two said it before me. So sorry, Adrian.
Okay.
I know.
Okay. Well, to wrap this back around, so
I'd like to talk about hip hop culture for the next 3 hours.
We're not going to do that.
How do you like the Beastie Boys?
Yeah.
Mostly
Okay,
because we're a board game podcast, not a hip hop podcast.
But Adrian, to originally get to your question about like Tales of Arabian Nights, it's fine to say mechanically it's a very poor game, but the experience of the game is amazing. But as long as you say like you can separate those two, and then you can personally say I value these things more. But as long as you give the time to be like, while we were playing, it was great. But afterwards or whatever, it just always like you just keep going back to the messy way you deal with everything in the game.
Okay, so to take that back around a little bit further to the entire point of this conversation when it comes to ethics and board gaming, like if we were paid, if we were paid to review Tales of the Arabian Nights.
Okay.
Right. How would you want somebody who was paid to review that game to address that game in a way that you felt was ethical? Now, this is a little difficult because, like, obviously you guys like the game and you like the
I'd like to say that it's an amazing game because it is.
I think that it would be ethical to say there's a lot of sorting out of like matrices and a lot of passing of books, and like I don't enjoy that mechanic.
I don't feel like anybody could play that game and be like, mechanically this is an amazing, well thought out game.
It's
rock solid.
Yeah.
I think you could be like, it's mechanically clunky.
Yeah.
Because so much of a game like that, like you said, like it would be hard for anybody to say that's a mechanically sound game. And yet, in board game reviewing and media, the vast difference in experience. Like if you said a movie was poorly shot, poorly framed, poorly
too much Dutch angle.
Yeah,
I think you're doing the intro
poorly
speech from
scripted,
Swordfish.
like all these things for a movie, or for music, if it was poorly composed, poorly recorded, poorly whatever.
Right.
But it made me laugh, or I enjoyed the time I had with it. Like, how do you balance those? And then especially when you throw in, again, trying to drawing this whole focus back to what this debate is about, like paid reviews. How do you
Because I think
that?
a review needs to have both of those aspects, and I think that there are people who care very, very much about the mechanical production of whatever you're talking about. They want to know about the cinematography, or they want to know about the production value on the beats in this record. And then there's other people who are like, I don't give a shit. Am I going to have a good time playing this with my friends because it's going to make us make dirty jokes? Is it going to be about fucking mermaids? Like, are there going to be Michael Bay level explosions? Because that's what I want. I don't care about the cinematography. And so, like, if you are willing to just address, and if you're being paid, you can talk up all, I don't know, you can say complimentary things about the mechanics and still be honest about your personal experience with it, or vice versa.
Okay.
I don't know.
Zach, Jeff, do you guys have anything to add to that?
I think I've won.
Okay.
They're actually both dead. I killed them.
All right.
Her nails are very sharp.
Yeah.
No, 'cause that was a great answer. Real quick, let's go around and let's just to close this up, give our final thoughts on how we feel the proper ethical way to deal with paid reviews. And feel free if you want to touch a little bit. We didn't really get into this in the episode. It got little long on us here. If you want to touch on, if you feel there's a distinct difference between a paid preview or a paid review and things of that nature. So Zach, let's start with you. Go ahead and sum this up.
Okay, there's a world's difference between previews and reviews. If it's objective, then there shouldn't be nobody should have any problem with it being paid, especially if it's like rules or something like that. But for me, it's just about, like I said, it's just about being open and transparent. If you're getting paid, just say it up front. Say it so everybody knows that going in.
Yeah. Jeff, what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, you should throw that shit right up front. Be like, yeah, we got this for free. Yeah, we're getting paid by so-and-so for this review, and please enjoy. And previews, it's, I don't know. I don't give a shit about previews. Like, if they're paid or not, whatever. I mean, that's not where my opinions are going to come out of. Like, oh, that kind of looks cool. Oh, okay, well, and then I'll save the real opinions for when, the game gets closer to coming out.
Yeah.
And Caitlin?
Yeah, I think people would be much more, accepting of paid reviews if people were just upfront and honest about it. And they were like, hey, yeah, we're getting paid for this. That's what's up. So take that for what it's worth. I don't know what the fuck the difference between a preview and a review is with regards to board games. I assume with previews you can still be wrong. So that's my opinion.
So to answer that, the difference going into my expectations here. So a review is supposed to be more of like an analysis, like whether it's a good or bad game, blah, 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 blah. A preview or a rules explanation is much more of an objective, like this is the game. Like a preview for or Tales of the Arabian Nights would be like, all right, well, here's the board, here's the cards, here's what you're doing. Like here is what the game is. It wouldn't talk about whether it's positive or negative or the differences in like player interactions and things like that. It's just, this is what you're getting in the box.
Look at this
what
sweet
you do
miniature.
with it past that is up to you.
It's a flesh beast.
Yeah.
Yay! So it's like reading someone's Kickstarter list of shit that's in the box.
Yes.
Essentially.
Yeah.
Okay.
More or less. And for me personally, I think that regardless, I personally would like all of those to be disclosed if they're paid in any way. Whether it's we filmed this rules walkthrough on a demo copy that was provided by the company. I would like that to be disclosed, especially if it's a review. If it's supposed to be something that's objective, or you are saying from some kind of an objective or subjective point of view, your point of view, whether it's a good or bad game, I want to know what is influencing that, whether it's that the game was provided for free, whether it's that the publishing company paid for it, whether it's that you had a really shitty day, not quite that extreme. But I want to know what biases are going into those discussions. I do think there's a vast difference. I'm not going to get upset about a paid preview or a paid rules walkthrough. We mentioned early in the episode, Heavy Cardboard was involved in one of these earlier discussions. Their walkthrough and then full game plays, I don't care that they get paid for those, because anybody who's watching those videos, they get to see a rules explanation, and then they get to see the game being played. It's the same thing they'd see if they were at a board game store and saw somebody playing the game on a table. And then at the end of the episode, people talk about how they felt about the game. Again, something that we do every time we play a game. We finish the game and it's like, oh, hey, what'd you think about that game? We talk about games when we get finished playing them. I don't think that that's something that people should be too concerned about being influenced by being paid. It's not a problem if it's paid for. I think it's important to acknowledge if it is paid for, but that's about it. Ultimately, if you have come to trust a reviewer or whatever source of information, whether it's board games, video games, music, videos, whatever, if you trust their opinions on the matter, then it doesn't matter if they're paid or not. You trust their opinions for some reason, likely because it aligns with your opinions. So just go with that. I don't think it's a huge deal. And then
one day I'll vigorously debate with you about levels of disclosure, but not tonight.
Yes.
Not tonight.
The only other thing that I will say about this is we mentioned it very briefly early on in this discussion. Things like music and movies and art, paintings, written, all that stuff, those kind of critical analysis, a lot of those people, they are paid outside of the industry. They're not paid by the authors of books, the painters of paintings, the sculptors of sculptures. God, I hate using those like phrases back to back to back, whatever. They're not paid by the creators. They are paid by things like trade magazines or newspapers or, nowadays by the people who consume that media. So if you really want objective and honest reviews and you don't want to have to worry about biases, don't rely on people who give you that information to be paid by the people who are making whatever it is that you want the review of.
Thank you for that takedown of capitalism, Adrian.
Support your
one last thing.
Your content creators. It's not a takedown.
I think you just did kill Jeff.
Destroy the proletariat.
If you want an objective review, make sure the reviewer is getting paid from a non-objective source.
There are no non-objective sources in this world.
Well, and that will be our next discussion: is biases and objectivity. And maybe we'll find a way to have Caitlin back on for that one, since she clearly has opinions.
I have opinions about everything, my dear.
As do I.
I know, which is why we will probably get in a fist fight.
That's why we just have to be
claws.
Claws. Or just have to be cross-country.
Yes.
That way you don't have to actually fist fight.
I'm really glad I'm not in the room right now, because I might be slashed.
Oh, please. Wolverine doesn't waste his talents on the likes of you.
All right. So this has ran a little bit longer than we initially intended. We might continue some of this discussion later. If you have thoughts on this, obviously, like we talked about at the beginning, it's been blowing up all over social media. Feel free to chime in on our Boardgame Geek Guild thread in guild number 2731. Zach put up a nice post. There's been a couple of responses. Zach, would you like to go over those initial responses?
Yes. So Eric just basically says we should check out the latest episode of the Botch games that the thread you linked is based on, and we talked about that in the beginning too. So
he didn't say Botch games.
He edited it to Botch games.
Damn it, he's edited it recently.
Yeah.
Did it say?
It said bitch games.
That's what I thought.
That's the reference in the next one.
Yes. Okay. So then Patrick goes, bitch.
Aw,
bitch. He goes, bitch, question mark. And then he references the Board Game Geek thread that we talked about on this earlier too.
Yeah.
So then Mike says, I personally think as long as a reviewer discloses if a game was a review copy and has good logic behind why they liked or didn't like it, I don't have any problems. I don't understand the people who say getting a review copy will sway a person's opinion. I personally think dropping a bunch of money on a game can sway my opinion about a game because it better be good. Otherwise, I spent $100 on a piece of crap. Two things I do like. The Cubist podcast has a buy it, play it, or burn it rating system. This is much more useful to me than a 1 to 10. Does the reviewer consider it something that should be in their collection? Does the reviewer consider it something that should be in their collection, something that you should just seek out to play, or something that you can just ignore? With the ridiculous amount of games coming out, this seems most helpful to me. Also, I like when reviewers look back on games that they reviewed in the past. There are a number of podcasts that will do this, and I find this more telling of a game's longevity, where they were high on a game initially, but then they haven't played it since, or is it just a game that continues to get to the table? Just a couple thoughts. Can't wait for the discussion and the inevitable blowback.
Yeah.
And then Patrick just said he's going to lower our Patreon to 50 cents.
You'll need.
God damn it.
You'll be the new.
That was new. That's been since we started recording.
Yep.
Damn it, Patrick.
You'll be the new king piece of garbage for our Patreon.
Yeah. Also, I would like to go ahead and apologize because I just realized this now. In our Wednesday episode, I am sorry I did not rant and rave and throw a big shit fit about the bullshit officiating in the Broncos game on Sunday against the Bills because it was garbage, and Von Miller got fined for a unsportsmanlike conduct.
I thought we weren't trying to date these, Adrian.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Because I remember that a couple people had tweeted that they were very eager to hear me rave about this.
Well, I'm
sorry I didn't get to that. I will throw that on next week.
Yes.
Hopefully, it will be coupled with my enthusiasm after we beat the Raiders this Sunday. Otherwise, if not, then you'll get a double dose of the Broncos losing back-to-back games and me being real fucking salty. So we had no emails related to this topic. We had no Twitter responses related to this topic. And I know we mentioned on Wednesday's episode that we were going to get into a little bit about personal biases influencing reviews. We didn't make it to that point. This episode ran a little bit longer than we wanted it to, so we're cutting it short. We will talk about that at a later date. We will talk more about like our personal biases and how they influence our reviews and how to, as a fan, accommodate that a little bit more in a future discussion episode. So hopefully everybody's enjoyed having a discussion episode instead of a review episode. It's a little bit different format. We're a little bit more rambly and off the cuff.
It was a discussion about reviews.
Ooh, that's so meta.
Yeah.
Ooh, getting, yeah.
Somebody should review this episode.
And then discuss it.
Yep.
Jeff, if people wanted to get a hold of us and suggest other topics for us to discuss, how would they do that?
You could email us at emails@milehighgameguys.com.
That is a great way to get a hold of us. You can also find all of us on Twitter. I tweet under @MHGameGuys.
I am Zach_MHGG.
And I am Jeff_MHGG.
And Caitlin, you have a Twitter too, don't you?
I'm at Ebola Jonesy.
Which Jeff has certainly just recently retweeted.
Yeah.
You mocking my Lonely Island Boys reference.
Hey,
So,
I tweeted something else that was much more positive.
I didn't see that one.
missed that one as
Adrian
well.
just always focuses on the negative. Don't worry about it.
That is also true. You can also find us on Boardgame Geek. We have a guild. It is guild number 2731. Zach posts awesome posts relating to our review and or discussion topics each week, where you can chime in your thoughts and questions, concerns, whatever you want. Feel free to find us over there. We're on Facebook and Instagram /MileHighGameGuys, where you can see pictures of games we play and
Mostly me photo sniping y'all.
other
You're not wrong.
Yeah.
shit. Not wrong at all there, Caitlin.
I have a lot more stuff to tag too. So,
Yep.
yay.
If any of you would like to join Caitlin in being a super baller supporter of the show,
Make it
you
rain.
can jump over to you can jump over to patreon.com/MileHighGameGuys. We have a Patreon over there. You can be one of our patrons, support the show financially, help us get better equipment, and hopefully expand our reach and do more and more awesome things. Thanks to Caitlin's generous increase in pledge, we are now moving into our third goal, which is where we will start doing some video stuff of our game nights, games we play, recording sessions, things like that, and get that out to you, the fans. So hopefully y'all enjoy that. And
If you donate $25 and send an email, Jeff will totally take you on a date.
It'll probably be wings.
Yeah.
Jeff does like wings.
Yeah.
That's the incentive, ladies.
Or gentlemen.
or anywhere in between.
There's like 28 genders now or something.
I wouldn't start.
Yeah,
Shut that one down before it starts.
Yeah.
Right. Anyway, thank you everybody for listening. Thank you everybody who does anything to support the show, whether that's retweeting our posts, talking about us on Reddit, Facebook, Board Game Geek, Twitter, wherever threads come up about awesome board gaming podcasts. Because hey, we think we're awesome. Hopefully you do too.
They're awesome. Trust me.
Yeah.
I wasn't paid to say this. In fact, I paid money to say it.
She's paid money to say this. That is the ultimate endorsement. Thank you everybody for listening. Thanks, Caitlin, for joining the show. Zach, Jeff, as always, thank you for being a part of all of this. As always, I've been your host, Adrian.
I am still Zach.
And I'm Objective Jeff.
And I'm Caitlin. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Yep.
This was fun.
It was a bunch of fun. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Giant Bomb finally. They've been doing all the Murder Island videos.
Giant Bomb just revealed that they've been paid for all of their
They've been paid for everything. They've been lying to me this whole time. I've been giving them $35 a year. They finally got a chicken dinner.
Oh wow!
Finally.
Punchboard Media, where we all
bring something
to the table.
Pull up a chair
at punchboardmedia.com.